Theo Fernando started by painting his neighbor's garage to be able to buy groceries. Then he painted another neighbor's house and then some more. He started with no equipment, no supplies, no network. All he wanted to do was make something happen to be able to support his family. And from that small start 20 years ago, he was able to not only support his family but also build a successful local business that's still doing great. He says, taking a risk impacted my life in that something came from nothing, and we are still benefiting from that risk taking behavior to this day. Hi, my name is Sunil, and you're listening to This Might Not Work. Today's guest is not Theo Fernando, but someone who truly understands what makes decisions risky. Most importantly, this person knows how to maximize the rewards that one gains from taking a risk. Shruti Jain was a successful chartered accountant working with one of the big fours, and then she decided to become a classical Hatha Yoga teacher. Our conversation documents her journey while getting into the weeds of the what's, the whys, and the hows of yoga. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation. And yes, if you're keen to explore Hatha Yoga in its classical form, do sign up for one of her programs. You won't regret it. I know because I was part of one of her 5 day Yogasanas program and it was fantastic. So much so that I've incorporated what I've learned in my daily practice. It's been an immensely satisfying experience and I hope you'll gain as much as I did should you choose to sign up. All right, onwards to a conversation. Shruti, thanks so much for making the time for today's call. You and I did connect a few days back after a LinkedIn post that you had put up, proudly stating that yes, you are now a certified yoga teacher, Hatha yoga teacher, in fact, and you are ready to roll. And a few days later, you basically put up your first online workshop, and your LinkedIn tagline essentially reads, uh, "Former chartered accountant turned yoga teacher." Tell us
Yes,
what did that or where did that transition came about?
yes. So in 2016, I became a qualified chartered accountant, and my parents loved me then. Now I'm not really sure because my father still, at one point or other, he's like, you still have the option of going back to that luxurious job and getting earning all the money which you may not be able to earn when you're a Hatha Yoga teacher, which he's right. I may not be able to earn that much money in my entire life, even if I'm working 24 hours a day. So I just hope my father is listening to it and maybe maybe those shocks that he gets, it reduces a bit. So yes, I was a chartered accountant and I was working with the so at one point I worked with one of the big fours and then I worked with industry and the pay was quite good. The the environment was also very conducive. It wasn't like that, I was going crazy in the job. It was fine. But there has always been something in me which I call as seeking. I would seek. I would seek something better. If I'm sad, I would seek happiness. If I'm happy, I would seek joy. So that's how I have always been, and I had everything which a person can call that a 26-year-old girl, a successful girl. Uh, but there was something that was missing, and I was trying to find that, and it and I was lucky to have that point of time in my life when I had this severe back pain. So in office, I wasn't able to sit properly, and I used to have those cushions. A 26-year-old girl having back problems, and it was very painful. I went and see the doctor. Doctor said everything is fine. So what I did, I saw one. There was this park nearby, and there was this uncle who used to teach yoga. So I went and he instructed, and I did yoga. And guess what? My back pain worsened, and then I'm like, maybe this yoga thing is not for me. But it was nothing was working anyway. So I came across one of the ads by Isha Foundation where they were offering this course program named Yogasanas. Now, Isha Foundation is an organization dedicated to human well-being, and Sadhguru is the founder, who's a spiritual guru. So I thought to myself, like, they are like charging so many bucks for a 5 days program, and that to a spiritual organization. That uncle was teaching for free, and so I held myself back for quite some time. But then, like I said, nothing was working out. So I thought to give it a try. January 2020 and January 2022. Both the Shrutis are different. The girl who went and took that course and the girl who's speaking today. I do not hesitate that these are two different persons. The very way I sit, I talk, I walk, I smile, the very way I think, feel, and perceive life has changed and changed for good. That longing that was there, that seeking may not have ended, but that seeking has got a path. And so so when I started taking hatha yoga practices and courses, and I was doing it at my home. So what do you do when you hit a jackpot? You want to share it with your loved ones, right? And that's what I wanted to do. I thought of sharing it, offering it. And that's when I undertook this 5 months intense hatha yoga teachers training program, where you are not doing, like, where of course we were doing yoga approximately 10 hours a day, but that was just the yoga which they call yoga. We
Mm.
were in the training, that rigorous training was on for 24 hours. And in fact, to just share how much depth and how much yoga meant for each one of us who were there. So we used to have breaks, so ideally we would have 1.5 hour break between two sessions. So I thought, okay, half an hour I'll do my kriya, which is a form of yoga, and then half an hour I'll do one activity that is assigned to me, and half an hour I'll eat food. And that day they announced that it's only 1 hour break. And the first thought that came into my head was, oh, I won't be able to eat food today. The thought of leaving yoga or not do what is assigned or what is needed didn't even come to my head. That time it was very normal. In fact, for each one of us who was there, it was very normal. It was only later when I reflected back, I realized that the initial thought was so mesmerizing for me to to think of. So that's what. And I remember. So I used to watch this TV series in Doordarshan. Okay, so all the youth who would be watching it, they would be like, not Netflix, not Amazon Prime. She watches shows on Doordarshan. So your fan following is going to reduce now, Sunil. But
I wouldn't
but
worry about them actually. Yeah.
so there's this TV series which is called as Upanishad Ganga, and it's an absolutely wonderful for a seeker to watch. Um, when when you have existential life crisis, instead of going out and hanging out with friends or doing things that we do, you just watch this show, and that's what I did. And there was this particular instance where this person was teaching Sanskrit for a from a very long time, and a letter comes to his house, and wherein his servant opens it, and he says that you have been invited for this award to serve Sanskrit, and he said, हमने संस्कृत की सेवा नहीं की, संस्कृत ने हमारी सेवा की है. So I'm not going to go and take that award, which means I haven't served Sanskrit. Sanskrit has served me. And that was just so beautiful. That was so beautiful to listen to. And in the same show, there was this another series. So we all, most of us would have heard about Tansen, right?
I hope
You
so.
know, the famous
I don't
singer.
know about the fan following.
So Tansen, was used to sing in Darbar of Akbar, right? So Akbar once asked Tansen that whom do you think is the greatest singer? And Tansen said that my guru Haridas. And Akbar said that you sing in my darbar. You have that fame, money, wealth, and that voice. People look up to you. People appreciate you. How come your guru is the best? So Tansin said, I sing for appreciation. I sing before people. My guru sings for himself and his God. And there was this particular instance that where his guru just wakes up, sings, and sleeps. And there was so much blissfulness on his face when he was singing. And that's what I long to do. That's what I wanted to have. That you do something for yourself, not not to get appreciated, not to get money, but something just that is there. So so and I'm glad that I found yoga. I don't teach yoga. I'm devoted to yoga. And like that person said that Sanskrit has served me and not I. So people say, oh Shruti, you are brave, you're unconventional, you're courageous. But deep inside I know it's not me, it's yoga. It's it's not person specific. You do yoga, you can also become that person. And so Sadhguru says yoga works wonderfully. The only thing is that you have to do it.
Absolutely.
So that's what my journey has been about. Even today, when you said that, what about your transition and from chartered accountant to a yoga teacher? To me, the essence was yoga. If if people just could hear it, and so you ask people that you do yoga, right? So when I was in training, when you get so much, like I said, you want to share it with your loved ones. And so the first feeling that I had, after I finished my training, I'm going to go and offer it to my loved ones, my family, my friends. So till date, no friend and family member has been ready to learn yoga from me or from anywhere. So that's one. But they would say, I have so much work to do. I don't have time for it. Sadhguru says, if you think that what you do is important, shouldn't you enhance yourself? How can you enhance your activity without enhancing yourself? So you need to take out time to upgrade yourself, to do the work that you think is important for you. And that's where we all are at. So I I am here, and we just wait for people. Whosoever realizes he needs yoga, we just offer it. And it's actually not us. teachers are just a tool. It's yoga in them, which happens.
Mm. So, what I'm hearing through you is essentially what I've not really heard from others who are yoga practitioners, probably because the kind of yoga that I practice and the kind of teachers from whom I'm learning this, they're all Westerners. They aren't really talking in the exact same way that you are talking. What I'm hearing is essentially yoga is just as spiritual, or probably more spiritual than it is physical. Is that correct?
So, so in one of the conversation you mentioned that this podcast would be very good for people to realize that instead of going to gym they have yoga, which they can use as a physical exercise. So, so Sadhguru says that actually people think that yoga is an Indian form of exercise, but just think about it. Indians never needed exercise. They never needed to do exercise. If they have to get water, even getting water from the well was an exercise. Everything that they did was an exercise. So precisely, if they were exercising well, where was the need for yoga? There must have been something else for which yoga was needed, wasn't
Mm.
it?
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. I never thought of it that way. Interesting. So, what do you think, or what do you think might be something that's getting in the way? The reason why I ask you is it is bar none the most accessible form of exercise that they can do. There is a spiritual component for sure, but there's also the physical component, which is highly utilitarian and practical for people, at least the masses. People, yeah, they do say that, yeah, it's an Indian form of exercise. Even Indians say that it's an Indian exercise. But my question is, none of these Indians are actually practicing yoga. The worst or the minimum that they can do is probably a round or two, or maybe 5 rounds or 10 rounds of Surya Namaskars, and that's it. There's like so much more to learn in yoga beyond that. And going back to my concern regarding the exercise, the accessibility of yoga, it doesn't require a lot. And the people who've been whining and complaining about the fact that they haven't been able to exercise for the past 2 years because of the pandemic, this, that, and the other, all they need is a yoga mat and that's it. What do you think might be getting in the way? And the reason for this question is you also mentioned that you went to the first time you went to learn yoga from that teacher in the park who was teaching for free, your injury actually worsened. That was exactly what my experience was when I didn't have an injury. I was just sore all over. The teacher was trying to maybe break me in some way or the other, but it didn't go well. That was my inhibition or something that stopped me from embracing yoga truly. But what about the others? What do you think is getting in the way of people really using this fantastic tool?
Hmm. So two things. First, like you mentioned, that park yoga, and so do you think that there are a lot of misconceptions about yoga, right? That's what Sadhguru saw when he went to US. He saw that people are using all distorted forms of yoga, and that's where he felt the need to bring Hatha Yoga, classical Hatha
Classic.
Yoga,
Yeah.
Hatha Yoga in its purest form, without any distortions. So Sadhguru says the lineage of classical Hatha Yoga is the lineage of idiots, because because they think that they're stupid, they are not smart enough. So they just received it and offered it. They did not think the need to innovate.
Mm.
They did not think they're smart enough to innovate.
Yeah.
So that's what, without any distortion, what was there, and it has been received through that lineage, and that is what is offered. Now, of course, it may take some time for people to realize about classical Hatha Yoga, how it is different from how, so we have to say how it is different from others, but how It is all it is. There is, the undistorted form of yoga. So the misconceptions of yoga is something that may be one of the reasons that people are not. So there is one more thing that, so Patanjali, who's the who's the author of Yoga Sutras, and he's also held as father of modern yoga. Um, he starts his Yoga Sutras with just one phrase. The Yoga Sutras, you open Yoga Sutras and it is written, and now yoga. That's it. No thesis. So what it means is, if you've realized that money can't give you that blissfulness, your relationships can't give you that fulfillment, your job, any fame, everything that you've tried and it may not have worked, now yoga. There are people who are stuck there, maybe if I'm doing a job, MBA would solve my problem. Oh, well, if I get a husband or a wife, that would solve the problem. Oh, kid would make me the happiest person in the world. Or this promotion, if I get and not the other person, this is going to give me that fulfillment. So most of us may be stuck there, right? Uh, More number of views on this podcast may give me happiness. If you're there, you haven't reached there where yoga happens.
Mm.
So, Sunil, what do you think yoga is?
Because we are already talking about Hatha Yoga, can you dive a little deeper into Hatha Yoga? Because for most people, yoga is yoga. They aren't really aware of the different forms of yoga. We have Hatha Yoga. I'm an Ashtanga Yoga practitioner. We have Iyengar Yoga. We have Vinyasa Yoga. We have Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga and Yin Yoga. Goodness, there are like so many forms. So you mentioned specifically classical Hatha Yoga, and I know that almost every other form of yoga was derived from Hatha Yoga. But can you enlighten the audiences, people who are listening to this, to what exactly Hatha Yoga is and why do you think it's special?
Yes. So, even I was not aware of the types of yoga you mentioned before I went for the training, and
Okay.
few I haven't heard there also. So, like I said, it is classical Hatha Yoga, yoga in its purest form. Now, Sadhguru says, uh, Hatha in Indian language it means adamant. So your body says, I, I can't do this anymore. But you're adamant. You still do it. Your mind says, I give up. But you're adamant. You still do it. So that's how he put it lightly. But yes, Hatha Yoga has its significance. That in yoga, in they say Ha means sun and Tha means moon. And Hatha Yoga is a science of bringing the balance between sun and moon within. Now, again, listening to it is fine, but to make it experientially true for us, we seem far away.
Mhm.
What we can see is whatever yoga you're doing, is it working for you? So, growth today, we may see in terms of money, job position, relationships, but Sadhguru says, how about we measure growth in terms of, are we getting better? Are we getting more joyful? Are we getting more sensible? If these three things are happening with you, you do anything that works for you. But if it is not happening, then maybe you should Go out and try something. For me, there were two types of yoga, Park Yoga and classical Hatha Yoga. I think I may have been fortunate enough to find classical Hatha Yoga so soon in my life, and it worked wonderfully for me. So that's what we have to offer. If if things are not working well, if you're not getting more joyful every day, then maybe it is a good idea to invest at least 30 minutes of your day.
Uh, so just picking back on the question on the exact aspects of Hatha Yoga. Okay, so you mentioned that there is classical yoga, and what was the other form of yoga that you mentioned that you got to know about?
No, I just made fun of it, like Park Yoga.
Oh, okay, all right. So yes, one of the things when I was doing research, as with all the things that I do before diving into yoga, because I was skeptical. And the reason why I took up yoga was I was fed up with strength training. So for the longest time, I did powerlifting. Then I moved on to strength training, basically used my storeroom as a home gym. It went well, but then I got really bored because I got so used to it that it was not giving me any challenge, at least physically. So I thought, okay, maybe I should try something else. I tried different kind of mobility systems, but it just wasn't giving me the feedback, the response that I needed to physically challenge myself. Then I was like, okay, maybe I should try yoga. And I try to look around, and before I, get into anything, any big project, I basically do my own diligence, do my own research to understand what's what. And what I got to know was when it comes to different forms, like Ashtanga Yoga, that's like quite rigid when it comes to its approach. It's got like different series, like half primary series, intermediate, so on and so forth. And people never really get to the advanced level, okay, because it's like a lifelong practice. Same goes for other forms of yoga, like vinyasa is like creative yoga essentially. The rule said, then you try to mix match it. It's good for beginners. People, the internet in general says stay away from Ashtanga yoga. So I thought, okay, that's the thing that I need to be doing. Anyway, but they also mentioned, I also read many comments which essentially say that Hatha yoga is the original yoga and the form of yoga that's also soft. I couldn't really quite comprehend what soft meant because I've seen Hatha yoga videos. They didn't really look soft by any measure. So would you be able to elaborate on that?
Yes. So I may not be able to elaborate on the other yogas that you mentioned,
No
but
problem.
I can understand why you've read that comment that it's a soft yoga in Hatha Yoga. So yoga essentially means developing that inward focus. It's not a performance.
Mm.
It is something that you do with yourself. We do it when our eyes are closed, with our eyes closed. So during the entire practice, we do it with our eyes closed, with that inward focus. It's not an exercise. It's not like So what's an exercise? You go to gym. Your friend does 50 push-ups. Now you want to do 100, at least more than what your friend does. That's not how yoga works. It's not an exercise.
What advice would you have for someone who's thinking about yoga? Because most people only think about yoga, only a few are actually doing it. What would you tell them? How would you want to, I wouldn't say convince, but how would you want to educate these people who are on the fence of taking up yoga?
So there are two things. So first is that everyone is actually seeking. Sadhguru says that today's youth is not like they're going to the temple. They're exploring. They may be going to the wine. You just have to make them turn to divine.
Okay. Nice.
So, for, let's say, let's say you lost your peace today. Okay. Now, what would you do? You would yell at your wife. If it goes on, you would pick a quarrel with your neighbor. If it still continues, you may go and shout at your boss. Now, when you shout at your boss, people think you need medical help. So they take you to a doctor. Now, doctor pops some pill into you, and you suddenly become peaceful. Maybe for a limited time, but you do become peaceful. So, what are these pills? These pills are a certain kind of chemistry that is within you. Peace is a certain kind of chemistry. Anxiety is a certain kind of chemistry. Joy is a certain kind of chemistry. So, yoga creates that chemistry within you. That joy joy and peace are just natural for you. So, if this is what you're looking for, if this is what we all are looking for in various ways, and there is something that seems to be, let's say, worked for people who tried, then how about just giving it a try? So, so Sadhguru says you do one exercise, you do one yoga practice, 30 minutes in a day for 6 months. After 6 months, you can decide if you want to do it or leave it. He says, see, after 6 months, it's like brushing. That when you were young, your parents asked you to brush. You didn't like it, but you still brushed. Now, just imagine now if your mother comes and says that, oh, that brushing thing was a mistake, you give it up. Will you give it up?
I don't think so.
Because by now you've realized the significance. So, he says, if after 6 months I come to you and say, see, this yoga thing was a mistake, now you would not be able to give it up. I heard him speaking this in one of the programs, my first program that I undertook. And of course, those were words. But it came out so true for me. Like you said that you take your yoga mat along. I remember there was one time when I was going to my yoga studio and my mother asked, when are you going to come back? And I said, oh, I'll come back in the evening. I have various sessions. So she said, why don't you take something to eat? You're going to be there till evening. And I said, yeah, I'm going to be till that evening. Let me take my yoga mat along.
Yeah.
So that's what. Of course, one has to take that step of doing it, of starting it. Because but once you start doing it, you would realize what it does to you. And trust me, it is harder to give up than to begin.
That is true. That is something that I can vouch because, like I said, going back to my own experience as a first time, I wouldn't say seeker, but first time, yogic practitioner, my first two sessions, no, I think my first session, because I never went for the second session, if I remember correctly, despite the fact that I had paid up for 6 months. And after the session, I was sore and it was like painful. The teacher wasn't really helpful in a sense that they were trying to, suppose I was doing a, bridge, they were basically trying to elevate my lower back. It was crazy, super crazy. And this is precisely something that has happened with some of my friends within my circle. They paid up for a quarter, maybe an entire year for a yoga class. After like a few sessions, things drop off. There are a couple of people who've gotten themselves injured in the neck or in the back. And they do say that maybe the instructor wasn't qualified enough, which could be a genuine thing because there are like so many yoga teachers, but so many yoga teachers who are actually certified by yoga instructors or yoga schools. And these days, because of the proliferation of lots of online yoga schools, things are actually becoming totally out of control. There are schools offering 100 hours, 200 hours, 500 hours yoga certified training courses for God knows, how many rupees. But yeah, so I don't know. Is there a right way to find a good teacher?
So I remember when I was in the training, Hatha Yoga teachers training program. One of my friends called me up and he asked how is the program going. And I was like, these people do not make Hatha Yoga teachers. These people make Hatha Yogis. Sadhguru says only a yogi can transmit yoga. But a Hatha Yoga teacher can never transmit yoga. And that's what we experienced in that training. The amount of time that was given to us on how to be a teacher was very less as compared to how much emphasis was given on us being yogis. He says that Sadhguru says we planted undercover yogis in the society. They outside they look like normal people, but inside they are yogis.
Yeah.
So
So how to find it here when it comes to classical Hatha Yoga? You would find that the teachers are not very different because we are not trained. We were
nurtured.
Mm-hmm.
And a Hatha Yoga teacher, you in fact, it will be very difficult for you to differentiate between two Hatha Yoga teachers
Mm-hmm.
because it's yeah. So it's very less about that. We all are same only. Uh, so so when when it comes to classical Hatha Yoga, you don't even have to think which teacher should I go for. You just go for it, and whatever needs to happen will happen. And also, you mentioned about that lifting up and those things. Now, of course, a yogi and a teacher just want to speak about it. So, when it comes to Hatha Yoga, we don't use any props. Sadhguru says your body needs to come to that position in its own,
Yeah. Agree.
not forcefully. If you bring it forcefully, then it will cause damage. In fact, he says you do injury to yourself and show me how you can do it. Because in Hatha Yoga, we do it as much as it is comfortable for us, to the
Mm-hmm.
extent we can do. And slowly and gradually, I remember this Hatha Yoga teacher, I asked him when I learned it for the first time that, this my hand is not touching the ground. And he said it will happen. To be very honest, I wanted to believe him, but I don't know when it will happen. So he says you keep doing it. Push yourself.
you just try to increase it like by 2 to 5%. That's it. You don't push yourself beyond your limits.
And I still remember after a few months, I texted him, yes, now my hands are touching the ground. Because the body slowly adapted to it, right? So you don't push your body beyond what it can't go at this point of time. So if anybody has this kind of understanding, you will be in good hands.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That is so true. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it usually takes weeks, months, sometimes even years to do it perfectly the way we see it on screens. Like there are certain poses which are complicated, obviously for obvious reasons, and people want to do that because it looks so cool or fancy, and they realize that they're not able to do it, and they keep trying. After a few weeks they give up. I think that is also one of the reasons, because if they want to, let's say, do a particular movement in the gym, they go to the gym, they learn how to do it. Within a session or two, they are able to do it. But when it comes to something like yoga, it's a practice. There's a reason why they say it's a practice. It comes over time, it comes gradually. And I personally found yoga to be a very good medium to be a little more patient with yourself, and a little more patient in the way that people talk about self-care a lot, right? When you actually do yoga, you get to experience that. You get to be more uh, patient with yourself, as it well, it'll come. I know there were like certain poses that I was not able to do, but now I'm able to do. It's time for me to go a level deeper. Okay, that's how it works. But that's where the whole fun is. To always keep exploring, to always go to the next level, unless you reach perfection. I don't know when I'll reach perfection, but that's besides the point. There's more to the practice than to the act of doing yoga, because it's the continuous practice is what leads you to what you were mentioning, to that zone where you are actually talking about or thinking in terms of being spiritual, or thinking in terms of that union that you mentioned. That's my belief, but I'm a new practitioner myself, so I don't know that. Hence I thought of checking in with you as to what else besides finding a good teacher and to keep a consistent practice can you share in terms of honing their own practice if they're already practicing.
Can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, sorry. What I was saying is, we covered the aspect of picking the right teacher. We also covered, okay, what Hatha Yoga is, but there's a set of audiences, new yoga practitioners, who would want to take this up, but are stuck, confused, or switching around. I bring this up because there's too much content online. There's just way too much content online. And this often leads us to distractions. So one day you're following one teacher, the second day you're following something else because you think, oh, this teacher seems to be much better. And I'm talking about folks who are primarily learning this online, because I've learned it online. But uh, I think because I've got gray hair, I thought, okay, it's better to stick with a particular teacher than shop around. Any thoughts or comments on new yoga practitioners?
Mm. So to start with, so it is not about getting into that perfect posture. In terms of that bending, having that sort of flexibility on day one, we need to understand that everybody's body is different
Mm-hmm.
in terms of flexibility, right? So, in fact, the emphasis is not on the postures when it comes to Hatha Yoga. It is about the alignment. If the if you're following the instructions and the alignment is proper, it is fine. You just keep going. And one day the body will also be flexible to get into the posture. But it is not about having or aiming to reach that sort of flexibility. It is beyond that. So that's how I said, it's the emphasis on keeping your eyes closed and doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is first. Second, now how to keep doing it. Now, when you start doing Hatha Yoga, you would get to know what is it is doing to you. So one day, so immediately after I learned my first practice, my boss suddenly appreciated me. This Shruti, you know what? You're a very calm and peaceful person, and this work that you've done, it's so organized. And I knew that I was a mess before, and I could see the change that was coming in terms of mental productivity. Then there was one time when my mother uh, when my mother brought a glass of milk for me, and I said I don't want to have it, and mother, she insisted. And when she went to the other room, it just somehow spilled all over. And my mother came back and she was all angry and shouting at me that, I knew that you didn't want to have it, why would you do that and this and that. And I saw her getting angry. And I said, it's okay, I'll clean it. I didn't do it intentionally. I'll clean it. And I cleaned it and I went to my room. And I realized if it was old me, I would have shouted back. I would have got angry back at her because it wasn't the fault. It wasn't my fault. But I could see that she was in anger. And then, I just moved to a different room. And not because I was upset with her, because I wanted her to have her own time. And that was one of the most wonderful moments that I still have, because you are not reacting to the circumstances. If you choose to be peaceful, if you choose to be calm, you are that calm. You would, when once you start doing yoga, you would start realizing all the changes that are happening in terms of your energy, physical agility, in terms of your mental productivity, in terms of your emotional stability. And once you start experiencing it, you wouldn't give up. Again, the challenge is how to hold on to that time when it is not happening. Then, then that's where faith comes. Now, if you know, uh, I went for it, I learned it, and I just had faith in it, and it kept on working. And my mother says, see, if you don't have faith in anything, right, it won't work. So if you don't have faith, it won't work in the sense that you would more likely to give up. But try it for 6 months. You go for MBAs for like paying in lakhs
Yeah.
and spend 24 hours. You go and change the countries. That's what we do. We change the countries thinking that life will be good now. We we go for these certification courses. We do so many things
Yeah.
to enhance our life. 30 minutes in a day, 6 months, 5,000 rupees. I don't think it's a bad deal.
Absolutely. It is not a bad deal at all. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, again, that Hatha Yoga teacher in me. So we do not encourage people to learn the practices online. So there are certain practices in Hatha Yoga also which we teach online, but that's very few practices. Majorly the practices are offline because whatever is powerful needs to be offered in a committed environment
Mhm.
where a teacher can look at you,
Absolutely.
right? So that's one thing that I want all the listeners to take note of, that don't go ahead and start twisting yourself watching some video online. uh, Contact a certified Hatha Yoga teacher and he or she will be more than happy to help you out.
Absolutely. So, Shruti, we are just about time, but before I let you go, where can people find you online?
So I am on Instagram page.
The name is
Seek with Shruti.
Okay. I'll put the
And
links in
also
the
my
show
studio
notes.
name, yes, my studio name is Thiram Yoga. So I'll put both the links there. And yes,
Absolutely. All right. Super. So I'll share the link in the all the links in the show notes along with the studio name. And yeah, I hope we're able to convert at least 1,000 listeners. No, I don't, I don't know actually. Yeah, I hope we're able to convert at least a handful of listeners to look up what yoga is about and probably sign up for a few workshops and courses that you are offering, or the ones that are being offered by other certified Hatha Yoga teachers or certified yoga teachers. Now, I think certification has become so common. Everyone's offering a certification these days, which is questionable actually. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going to do their due diligence to make sure that they find the right Hatha Yoga teacher. And I I hope some of them also reach out to you.
Classical Hatha Yoga
Classical
teachers.
Hatha Yoga teacher. Yes, yes, absolutely. Super. Thanks so much for your time today, Shruti. Really appreciate it. Okay. So,
I'm so much grateful, Sunil. It's not every day that people pay so much attention. Someone who's not into Hatha Yoga gives so much importance and value to Hatha Yoga. I am so glad you reached out, and I'm grateful.
my pleasure. Thank you. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around. I deeply appreciate it. If you loved what you heard, please support me by subscribing and sharing this podcast with a friend or a loved one. It will really, really, really mean the world to me. Thank you. Until we meet again, stay safe and well.